Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to the podcast. This is Big Reptile Talk. This is going to be an amazing podcast. This lady that we're bringing on has been in the snake slash reptile hobby for years. There's going to be so much knowledge given tonight. I'm so excited. Um, I'm a huge fan. I'm gonna tell her when I actually learned about her. And she's gonna laugh. But before we get into the podcast, as always, we got to pay some bills. So this podcast is brought to you by Mile High Mutations. Shout out to my brother Dan over there producing amazing snakes. If you're into ball pythons, hit up his Instagram, hit up his Morph Market. Eugene, man, heavy hitter, man. I love you, man. Great supporter of the podcast. He's producing amazing snakes, and not just that, he has quality mulch. Shout out to my brother Paul over at Large March Morse. He's not producing anything, but he has an amazing collection. And when he does start producing snakes, he's going to be a heavy hitter in the game. Shout out to my guy Mike, man. MKL Exotics out there in Canada, man. Heavy hitter, producing quality hog noses, man. Hit him up, man. Hit his Instagram up. Tell him that you're interested in something. Shout out to my guy Fry's Critters, man. Big channel supporter. He's not even in the States and he supports the channel. So much love to you. Hit up his YouTube, hit up his Instagram. Shout out to Mad River Serpents and Rattery, man. Definitely give them some love. They're producing just amazing snakes. My brother Marino you already know Morse, man. Everybody will tell you I love my two favorite ball python Morse, Exantic and Pastel. I love the dark and I love the light. I don't know what it is, but he's producing amazing pastel snakes. So I'll go give him some love. Shout out to Matt Ye's Reptile Company, producing amazing snakes. Make sure you hit them up. My brother Ball and Hand Pythons, man, he definitely needs some love. So go hit him up. Check out his Instagram, his Morph Market. Tell him Derek's Reptile sent you. He definitely needs some more attention than he gets. And last but not least, King's Reptiles. They produce boas and ball pythons. Very high quality stuff. It's a husband and wife duo producing amazing stuff. And last but not least, shout out to Michaela's Farms. Now, this podcast, I'm excited about this one. So if you're here in the chat, much love. Text I'm Exotics. I see you. Frost Critters, Snake Man, everybody, the early birds, Williams, Rosenberg, I see you. This one is going to be an amazing podcast. When we come back, we're going to have Kathy Love, the queen of corn snakes. Okay. She's been doing this for so long, so don't go nowhere. Okay.
Whoa. Big reptile talk.
Now, when I tell you I am so excited, we have Miss Kathy Love, the queen of corn snakes. How you doing today?
Oh, great.
I'm excited to have you here. For those, and it shouldn't be too many, but for those that don't know, can you tell us how many years you've been in the game, in the reptile hobby, just in general?
Well, it seems like about a century or so. I got my first pet snakes when I was in high school in about the mid 1960s.
1960, your first snake. That is incredible. Like, where did you, if you don't mind me asking, where did you get it from? Because back then, you didn't have Morph Markets. You didn't have breeders and Pet Smarts and Petco. So where did you get your first snake from?
My first snake that I ever got was I grew up in Wisconsin, in southeast Wisconsin, and I got a garter snake from a local pet shop for 50 cents, and I named him Vladimir. And at that time, let's see, I was in about seventh grade, so that probably would have been about 1966 or something like that.
Oh man, that is incredible. 1966, first snake. Now, when you got your first snake, you're jumping into the reptile hobby. Do you feel like you had a mentor, or did you feel like you were kind of like self-taught?
At the beginning, I was the only weird person that I knew. Your average person was not interested in reptiles back then. And after my garter snake, I found out about a reptile pet shop in Milwaukee, about half hour, 45 minutes away, that specialized in reptiles. It was called Wisconsin's Own Pet Shop. I still remember that. And they would give me 35 cents credit for every garter snake I could catch. And we lived near a den. And I got my first big snake, which was a Wisconsin bull snake from Spring Green, Wisconsin, that next year. And once I got to know people at the pet shop, then I found out that there was a herpetological society that met at the Milwaukee Public Museum. And that's when I got to know some of the people at the museum, like oh, Max Nickerson and Bob Henderson, and then Sherm Ketchum at the zoo. That was when I was in high school in the late 60s.
Oh my goodness, man. I love that. Did y'all hear that? She came up in an era where you could go outside, catch some snakes, and they buy them from you from the pet store. 35, 40 cent a snake. That is incredible. I love that. I'm jealous.
It took a lot of garter snakes to pay for a $15 bull snake.
I love that. I love that. I am jealous, man. Now, I feel like when I found your Facebook, the whole reptile hobby followed you. I mean, from the big dogs, from Kabelka, on from everybody, and I say that to say, when you were, in the reptile hobby, who were some of the other keepers that kind of came up with you? Were you were like before like the Barkers and the Bills, or were y'all kind of coming up at the same time?
Well, one of the first that I met that was really instrumental in me learning a lot shortly after I graduated high school, I took a driving trip from Wisconsin down through Texas, and I I met Joe Laszlo, and Joe Laszlo was really cutting edge at the time. He was the first one to figure out about cooling colubrids and things like that. uh, I had been told by the guy at the zoo, you can't breed reptiles on a regular basis back in the 60s because to breed them, you have to cool them. And if you cool them, they catch a cold and die. So you'll just breed them by luck now and then. But Joe Laszlo was already figuring it out with Vitalites, and he really opened up my eyes and also helped me to meet a lot of other people. If you
Wow.
don't already belong to it, there is a group on Facebook called Old School Herpers. And if you want to like find out about some of the people from way back in the 60s and 70s and in that era, join that group and see some of the postings there.
Oh, I'm joining it. That's the first thing I do after this interview. That is the first thing I'm doing, joining it and just learning about that history, man. I love it. I love it. Shout out to Mark's Reptiles, Moon over Miami. I see you. Much love to everybody in the chat. Um, you've been doing this for so many years. Um, you know, give me an idea of what's something that the current you would tell the version of you when you first started in a hobby. What's one thing you would tell your past self?
Wow. Oh, there's so many things. We've learned so much collectively. Uh, Back then, it was kind of the blind leading the blind, and we were all finding out by trial and error, which was really exciting. But we did unfortunately lose a lot of animals over the years and trying to find those things out. Uh, I guess I would have I would have been amazed if I could tell my younger self what it was going to look like, uh, 20, 30 years later. And there's good and there's bad about the changes. It would have been great to help prioritize some of the good and maybe uh, try to minimize some of the bad.
Right. I get that. I get that. Um, now you've been doing this for so long. Who are, if you don't mind me asking, who are some of your favorite breeders that you just really enjoy?
Do you mean now or way back when?
Either both current, old school and new school.
Well, when I first started out, I always had the farmer mentality. My husband was more into photography and going out in the wild. I would do that somewhat, but not like he did. My main interest in seeing them or finding out about them in the wild was finding out uh, what parameters might be helpful in keeping them in captivity, because I was basically a farmer at heart. So some of the breeders back then were also collector. A lot of the various, uh, well, we called them Blair's king snakes back then, gray bands. They were super serious in locality, and some of them still are. And then some of the other various tricolors, milk snakes that started coming in from Mexico back in the 70s and 80s. That was so new and so exciting. And people like Bob Applegate, who I met before there was an internet and things like that, uh, it was so interesting going and seeing their places and seeing what they were doing. I don't think people now realize how different it was before there was an internet. It meant either traveling and seeing things in person, or snail mail, or long distance calls with the charges for long distance calls. Communication was so different just a few decades ago, and seeing people like Ernie Wagner and Bob Applegate and the other people, Philippe Devosley, those people who were really pioneers back then that we could learn so much from. And only if we got to go and meet them, or they came to our local herp society and gave a talk.
Right. Now, Miss Love, can I tell you how I ended up finding out about you?
Sure.
So I'm a big Tom Crutchfield fan, and he's been on my podcast at least twice. So, and I want you to kind of talk about this. So Tom Crutchfield, I think he posted it. It was either on his Facebook or it was either on his Instagram. He posted a photo of him and your husband Bill Love, and y'all were on the set of a horror movie. And this was like a real national horror movie. It was like Day of the Dead, I believe.
It
Um,
was Day of the Dead.
and I'm like, this is like a movie that's about to be on TV. And I'm like, this is iconic. And I was like, I said, let me find out who these people are. So lo and behold, I look up Bill Love. I do a little research on him. Then I look up Miss Kathy Love, and I'm like, this lady's a pioneer. She's been doing corn snakes for years. And do you want to know why I fell in love with you? I'm gonna tell you why. I said, hold on. This lady right here loves snakes and she loves Star Trek. And if I wasn't married, I would marry her.
I've been a big Star Trek fan since, oh, I think I was in eighth grade when the original series came on. And it was, I mean, there were no DVRs or anything like that back then. So that and Lassie were the two things that our whole family gathered around to watch at whatever time they were on. And they were family shows for us to grow up together with.
Well, I need you to talk to my wife because she hates Star Trek. She likes my
Oh,
reptiles, but she don't watch Star Trek. I guess she says she watched it too much. But anyways, I want to talk about that photo that Mr. Crutchfield published. Now, what was going on in this movie? Was it what this movie was this on in the theaters?
oh yes, yes. It was, there were several George Romero zombie movies. Night of the Living Dead, I think, was the first one. Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and they were silly, but they were fun. So they had for the Day of the Dead, they were filming it in Fort Myers. Tom lived not too far from us in the Fort Myers area, and we got to know Tom as well as anybody. As a matter of fact, I used to babysit his daughter Vanessa, which you see on Facebook all the time. Vanessa was the youngest person at our wedding in 1979. She was a little baby in her mother's arms. So Tom had various different reptile things in the Fort Myers area. He was at an exhibit at Wilson Waters, and then later he had sale, a mail order place. So Bill worked for him for a while, and we got to know Tom really well. And when they were going to film this movie in the part of it in the Fort Myers area, mainly the opening part of it, where the zombies are all waking up, the live people are trying to figure out if there's more live people. Tom was asked, or contracted to provide an alligator for that scene. If you watch the movie, in the very first couple of minutes of the movie, when the zombies are waking up, there's a bank, and there's fake money blowing all around it. They used one of those big airboat fans for. So they wanted two zombies to come out of the bank. They were actually chained at the ankles. They were like bank robber zombies. And there was an alligator. Tom only had a fairly big one. They wanted a smaller one. And they needed a zombie who wasn't afraid of gators that could go by him and kind of get the alligator to move out of the way. So my hubby got made up by Tom Savini, no less, who's very well known for this kind of makeup. And he was the big chunky zombie that kicked the alligator out of the way on the way out.
I love that. I love that. Like that is iconic. I need y'all to in the chat to understand what she just said. She met Tom Crutchfield. Tom Crutchfield, they shoot this movie, Day of the Dead, by Tom Crutchfield's house. And they ask him, hey, we need an alligator. Now, this is George Romero. This is national. This is going to the theaters. They say, we need an alligator, Tom Crutchfield. And they say, we don't just need an alligator. We need a zombie that's not afraid to go by this alligator. And Tom Crutchfield gets her husband in the movie. In Day of the Dead, a George Romero movie like that. That is history. Like, that's insane, Miss Love. I love that. I'm jealous.
It was a fun day. I got made up as a zombie too. We actually have a picture. I wish I would have thought of it. I could have brought it to show you on the screen here. We have a picture of the two of us made up like zombies together.
I seen it.
And oh, you did see that picture.
I seen it. That's the picture that made me reach out.
Well, we just actually went last June to the Monster Palooza over by the Los Angeles area, and Tom Savini was there with a little booth, and we got him to sign it for us. So that was kind of exciting after all these years.
I love that. I love that. This is like right now, this podcast was a must do because there's so much history right here. And I love it. And we're gonna talk about that. But I want to have a little fun. And I'm going somewhere with this. You know, your husband, Mr. Bill Love, and there's a reason that I'm asking this. This is your husband, Mr. Bill Love. How many years have you guys been married?
We were married in March of 1979. So our anniversary is coming up soon.
All right, so you've been married since March of 1979. Now, I'm asking you that for a reason. I want you to think back. What's the best reptile-related gift Mr. Love has ever gave
you? Most of the time, we actually decide on gifts together because they're things that we both want. I'm trying to think. It was if he gave me something that we didn't agree on ahead of time, it was probably a cute gag gift because he has a great sense of humor and he loves practical jokes. And I can't remember a specific one right off the top of my head at the moment, but he has given me a few over the years that were pretty funny.
Okay. Well, I'll accept that. I was just kind of curious, being a husband and wife in the reptile hobby. This is a way of me saying, okay, well, he's a good husband or he's a bad husband. Like my wife knows. Like my birthday was yesterday, and she knows. Like if my birthday come around or Christmas come around, I want something reptile related, or we getting divorced.
And what did she give you for your birthday?
She got me a brand new Pac-Man frog.
Oh, a live frog. Cool.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. I love frogs. I love snakes. I'm so excited. He's a baby, so I'm so excited to watch him grow up. Now, And we're gonna get into snakes soon, but I'm kind of curious. You know, you've been doing this for so long. You know, you were friends with Crutchfield, and Crutchfield is infamous for going overseas. He's Madagascar. He's here. He's there. He's over here. He's over there. My question to you is, where have some of the places that you and your husband gone?
Well, Madagascar was actually my husband's main place that he went to. He, I'm guessing he might have spent more time in Madagascar than any other American reptile person because he used to lead tours there. We've never been particularly rich, but because he led tours there, and he would go about a month to a month and a half each time that he went, and he went 12 different times. So he spent quite a lot of time there. I used to call it his other home. And I went there twice, once with him and once without him. Uh, so Madagascar is probably one of the main places that we've gone more than any other place away from home. Uh-oh, your sound disappeared.
Let me go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Um, Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Darlene. Thank you, Elsa. Yeah, it's birthday super chats. Get those birthday super chats in there. My birthday was Valentine's Day. Now Madagascar. You know, I've never been there. What's it like saying that, going to Madagascar?
Well, I can only tell you what it was like up until the early 2000s because we haven't been back there since. Basically, once the big recession started, or even just before that, around, I don't know, 2004, 5, 6, I people were, especially reptile people, didn't seem to have too much money, and we weren't able to get any tours together after that. So Bill didn't go because we didn't have any tours. But up until that time, the early 2000s, and during the 90s is when he went a lot and I went twice. Uh, it was it was really quite an adventure. The language of commerce is French, and luckily for Bill, he had taken a couple of years of French or several years of French in high school, which doesn't make you fluent, but it made it easier once he got immersed in it to pick it up better and more. So uh, it was a real adventure, and the people are great, and the animals, of course, are amazing.
Now, a lot of those pictures where I see Crutchfield, and I'm sure I can see Bill Love and you and Madagascar, they have like tribes there and stuff, right?
They have what there?
Like little tribes.
Tribes of people?
Yeah, like tribes, like little,
Yeah.
I don't want to sound
Yeah.
racist or anything, but like Indians, and they have tribes, like where you'd go into like a village. Oh my God, thank you, Guapame. You'd go into like a village and you talk to a tribe, right?
Well, sort of. They have, well, this is going back a decade or two now to remember this stuff, but I believe there were 17 or something similar to that, different tribes of people in different parts of the country. And some of them, like from the highlands, were descended more from Indonesian type people, and some of the lowland ones, especially on the west side, were descended from African people across the water. So the tribes did have different heritages between them, but they were becoming a little more Europeanized at the time. They did speak a common language of Malagasy, which nobody else speaks who's not from Madagascar. But usually there were some people in each village who could speak at least French, not so much English, although in later years of my husband's tours, uh, English was becoming a little bit more common. But if you could speak French, you could usually find somebody who could speak French. And when you go there, you don't just rent a car like you do here in the US. You rent a car with a driver, and the drivers always could speak French. So my husband could communicate well enough to get along with them.
I love that. I love that. Like, people in the chat, I need y'all to understand, like, this is iconic stuff right here. Been doing this since 1960, 1970. been known Crutchfield, been to Madagascar. We didn't even really touched on a lot of the stuff I want to talk about yet. So now I want to show a picture and kind of talk about this. Now to me, this is insane. The Kathy Love Okeet adult corn snake. Is this snake named after you?
Well, actually, the history of breeding Okeetees, which of course descend from areas of Jasper County, South Carolina, and were made famous by the Okeetee Hunt Club, which was in Carl Cawthill's books from way back when there was no internet. You thrived on these books by Ditmars and Caulfield and a few others from back then. So that's how the name got popularized. But then, about in the 80s, when it became a little bit more common to start breeding colubrid snakes, uh, several different people who were interested in the locality animals, including me and other people, well, we started breeding the prettiest ones to the prettiest ones. A lot of people who haven't seen wild caught animals from that county don't realize that not everyone looks like that. It's it's the one out of 100 that you're looking for, not the ordinary average one. They do tend to have big blotches. They do tend to have large black borders. A lot of them tend to have a dirty wash on them of black, and they tend to have longitudinal striping. So, of course, all of us breeders selected away from those dirty traits and selected towards the brightest and most contrast traits. And we all had kind of our different lines. And then every so often, we would, crisscross our breeders and do them back and forth. Or somebody would come with a new exceptional breeder that was with wild caught uh, lines. My husband caught a couple from there, but other ones we got from there just didn't turn out to be anything exceptional. So as time went on, for instance, Lee Abbott is well known for them. Lee Abbott he was into corn snakes from way, early, but he got into Okeetees a little later than I did. And one of the years he decided to get into it, he came down and he bought a lot of babies because the only way to get the exceptional ones is to buy a whole lot, raise them up, and then start uh, selling the excess as they didn't look as good as the ones you kept. And then he did that with a couple other breeders' lines too, and got his own line. And then later on, we swapped some babies back and forth. So a lot of these lines share a lot of common blood, but then each breeder that takes whatever lines they're working with, and they select for a few years or a few generations, and they kind of get their own distinctive line.
Right. But so the Okeetees is what you were known for. That was your line, right?
Uh, that was that was one thing that I was really into, along with a few other people like Lee Abbott. But I got known, and you probably will see now and then people advertising either Love Lines or Abbott Lines or a few other people too.
Did y'all hear that? She got people we advertising the love lines of the corn snake. That's insane. She was one of the first people in the game breeding corn snakes. Like I love it. It's so iconic. And here's the thing. You weren't just a corn snake breeder. If you don't mind me asking, do you remember about how many books did you publish on corn snakes?
Two.
Two books? Two
Right. One was in 1995, I believe. And then in 2005, we published, well, we didn't publish, but the publisher did, an updated version that was included almost everything in the first book, plus we had kept lists of questions that people had that didn't seem to be addressed well enough. And we tried to answer those questions and update the morphs and things like that. And since 2005, I'm not aware of anybody having published one that was bigger or more definitive. I was kind of expecting Down Soderbergh to one of these days, and I know he was working on it, but to my knowledge, he didn't publish it.
Right. And see, to the people that is watching, I need you to understand how iconic this is. We all see those videos on YouTube of, shout out to Adam Wickens, where he's this is a corn snake guide, and this is the king snake guide on YouTube. Back in the day, you didn't have YouTube. If you wanted to get a guide, you had to hit up Miss Love and get that book that she made. You had to order her book, and that was how you learn how to care for your corn snake. You read her book and brush up on how to take care of it, right?
Yeah, back when I started, uh, the most exciting thing, there were TFH books, but they were always written by people that one day wrote about poodles and the next day wrote about iguanas and whatever the subject was. They weren't specialists. So in one of Caulfield's books, he had a chapter called "So You Want to Own a Boa," and that was like the Bible for anybody who wanted to learn how to keep snakes because there wasn't much else written.
I love that. I love that. And I think that I wish that we would have never got away from that, because nowadays you see these stores, you go into PetSmart and they have a guide that's 3 pages of information that is not correct. And it's like, don't read that book. If you want to brush up, go get Miss Kathy Love's book on corn snakes. You read this book, it's the most definitive book out there. And it's just, I love that. I love that. This is a published author and just the queen of corn snakes. I love it. I love it. Now,
You know who was really instrumental in changing that whole setup
oh,
and changing away from the TFH books that didn't really give a lot of useful knowledge was Philippe de Vosgelie when he started publishing his line of books, which are our Corn Snake Guide. The first one was part of his, and then later he sold it to another publisher. But he was the first person that I'm aware of that started having some care books for reptiles, and each one was written by a specialist who actually kept and bred that particular species instead of just today one and tomorrow another one.
right, right, right. It's just nowadays, I think that people want their information so fast. Our attention spans have gotten so quick. You look at these apps on your phone, and TikTok is 6 seconds, and people want information so quick. And it's just like, sit down, read the book. It's one of the best things you can do. Now, I want to talk about this, and give me your opinion on it, because you were friends with Crutchfield, so you were around when Crutchfield put out his selling list. And I say that to ask you, you were one of the big dogs when it came to breeding corn snakes and other snakes. So how did you make your sales? Back then you didn't have the internet, you didn't have morph market. So how did you get your animals to the public?
Well, actually, we were helpful for Tom when he first started doing that because we had been traveling with our Living Jungle reptile exhibit, a little mobile exhibit that we took all around the country. And we visited every zoo that we could find and every private breeder. There weren't many. This was back in the mid 70s, but there were a few, like Applegate and a few others. So we collected all that information. And then when we decided to come back to Florida, where Bill's parents were living, and we lived near Tom, and shortly after that, Bill even worked for Tom for a while. We took all of that contact info that we had from all the zoos and other people that we met, and Tom already had a number of them, but not as many as we had. So he incorporated that into his mailing list and started mailing out all these price lists. And then when we started doing it a number of years after he did it, we did the same thing. And then as time goes on, of course, you build up your mailing list. And when we started Glades Herp, which was a much bigger thing than just what we bred ourselves, we also did some imports and things similar to what Tom was doing. At one point, we were sending out about 5,000 lists every month.
5,000 lists a month.
Yep, a lot of lists.
Pioneer. You're a pioneer. Now, shout out to Musa Almighty. He said, "Where can I get your book? Is it on Amazon?"
Yeah, I believe it is. We didn't publish it ourselves. They just paid us not nearly enough to write it, and then they owned the rights to it. So we would just buy it wholesale and then resell it. Now that it's been sold to a couple different publishers, I don't even have a way to buy it wholesale anymore. but I have seen it on Amazon before, so people can buy it there. And if you ever come where I'm at a reptile show or something and you want it signed, we'll be happy to sign it for you.
Iconic, iconic. Now you touched base on something that I want to talk about because it's you were doing stuff. You were like a what's the word I want to say? But somebody a visionary. You were doing stuff that was ahead of your time. Because I remember, and I'll tell you a story, and then I'll lead into the question. I remember when I was younger, I used to go to the mall, and it was Indian Springs Mall in Kansas City, Kansas, and there was a guy. He used to be in the middle of the mall, and I can't remember too much of it because I was so young. But he had a snake. Nowadays, you can't do that no more. You know what I'm saying? Everything is so strict. So my question to you is, I want you to touch basis on your mobile zoo. What was it like? Can we talk about that? Like, what did you have in it? What did you do with it? What was just the whole idea and concept of a mobile zoo?
Well, of course, the main motivation was that we could make enough money so that we could work with reptiles all the time and see the whole United States. And since none of us were rich, it was a great way to tour the country. But we had venomous snakes and non-venomous snakes and lizards. We had some roughneck monitors. We had a couple rattlesnakes and cobras. About a 2 foot spectacled caiman, and lots of colubrid snakes and some pythons, a little bit of everything. It wasn't a huge exhibit, but we would take it right into the middle of shopping malls when we could fit, or occasionally out in front if we couldn't fit inside. We did mostly the southeast more than anything, but we went out to the southwest back in the mid 70s. There weren't all that many rules yet that prohibited us. The biggest problem we had is when we wanted to go into California with venomous snakes, because even back then you couldn't keep non-native venomous, so we had to get a license. And it was really funny because when we got there and they inspected it, they looked at our cages and they said they're not earthquake proof. And we said, well, what do we have to do to make them earthquake proof? He said, just put this chain or rope across the front so that they can't open up, and now they're earthquake proof. So that was pretty funny.
I love that. I love that. Now, to me, this is iconic. A mobile zoo. Now, what year did you do this? What year was that? Do you kind of remember what year that was?
I believe I started it with, actually, it was the roommate of Joe Laszlo. I lived with Joe and his roommate for a while in San Antonio, Texas, when I escaped Wisconsin when I was 23. And so it probably would have been about 73 or 74, something like that, that we started. And we first started touring around in Texas in different cities. And then we started expanding it to the southeast. When we went to Mobile, Alabama, my future husband came and saw us there. And then we didn't really get to talk to him too much, but then we went down into Florida and he came and visited us again. And then we went to see a slideshow that he did. We really liked what he was doing. And he was going to community college, but he wasn't doing too much real important. And when we invited him to come work for us, he came. So he traveled around with us and did that for a couple of years and decided we really wanted to get in on the breeding and move back to Florida and start some sort of a breeding thing like just a few people were just starting to do. It's been pretty exciting.
Right, right, right. I love that. Like, people in the chat and the people that watch this and will watch that, I need you to understand how iconic this was back in that time. This is 70s, 1973. You get a mobile RV and you set up exhibits, this section rattlesnakes, this section python, and you tour the country. You were one of the first mobile zoos, probably the first mobile zoo that we know of, and that, like, it's mind blowing. Like, to pull up to a store and say, "Hey, come up. You pay a fee, you can see our animals. I'm jealous. Like I'm about to ask my wife, can we buy an RV? I want to set up a mobile zoo now.
There were a couple others ahead of us, and now I can't remember who they were. One of them was out of Wisconsin or Minnesota, but there weren't very many, but there were a couple.
Miss Love, that is iconic. Like, you're visionary. I love it. Now, I want to give you a question. You've been in this 30, 40 plus years. What is one of your best memories?
Um, well, we had so many good times. Uh, it's hard to remember. Some of them were funny times. A lot of funny things happened. Some of the things that people would say. The fact that we were in our 20s and footloose and fancy free, but we were always trying to save money because we made enough to live on, but we didn't make any extra. So we had a truck camper that we would stay in with my pet iguana Don Juan, who went with me in the truck and out to the exhibit, and wherever I went, he went. Or she, we found out later. Uh, so we would go to uh, stay in the parking lot of the mall to save money, and then we would go to car washes to take our showers. So we would go late at night, and they were the car washes that you spray the car down. You put a quarter or 50 cents in or whatever, and you'd spray it down and everything. So we'd go there late at night, and we'd block the front part of it with our big truck with the camper on it, and then we would put on shorts and t-shirts and hose each other down and get our showers. I tell you, don't ever turn the soap on. That's some pretty rough soap. But never tried the wax. But it was a lot of fun times that were more fun in retrospect than they were at the time.
Miss Love, you have lived an extra. I can't pronounce that word. Extraordinary life, man. Like, so much history, so much knowledge. Like, I'm gonna be real with you. You need to do more podcasts.
I usually do about two or three a year. I don't usually watch or listen to them much myself. I do. I'm on a number of forums for corn snakes and other things that I'm into, like tricolor hognose on Facebook and so forth. But I usually get asked to do two or three podcasts a year, and I usually do them because I figure I've been doing this a long time, and I don't want to see the history lost because a lot of the newer, younger people that come in, they may know the biggest and best ball python breeders, but a lot of them don't even know who Joe Laszlo was and Bob Applegate and some of the other people that have retired or that we've lost that just aren't known too much now. That's why everybody needs to join that old school herpers and get an idea of some of the history. My husband wrote an autobiography, so if you want to hear some of his adventures or read about them, and also some of the history with various different old time herpers like Tom and other people, that's a good place along with these Facebook groups that I mentioned.
Right, right, right. Now, what made you decide to make the Corn Utopia site?
The Corn Utopia site, did you
Yeah, the
say?
website. Uh-huh.
Well, actually, I was looking for a name back. Was it I think it was the late 80s or early 90s, and I wanted a name something like that, but I realized that an old friend, Kevin Engie, already had that name, Cornutopia, but then he joined the Florida Fish and Game, and so he couldn't really do a business with reptiles anymore. So he graciously allowed me to take that name for myself.
How awesome is that? Everybody in the chat, make sure you hit the cornutopia.com. It's her website. It's freaking awesome. Now, just to have a little fun for shits and giggles, I consider you to be the corn snake queen. If you could sell any celebrity in the world a corn snake, who would it be?
Oh, wow. any celebrity in the world.
They're gonna
Uh, Boy, I'm gonna have to think about that one. It would be it would be pretty cool to pick somebody like maybe maybe it would be somebody from Star Trek.
somebody from Star Trek. I love that. I I watched all of them. I like John Luke Picard, Captain Janeway. I love them all. And my wife won't watch them with me.
But the ones that actually had the most effect on me, of course, was when I was younger and still kind of in the formative ages. From the original Star Trek, uh, it was actually Mr. Spock that had a lot of effect on me in my teenage years with trying to be logical and practical. Uh, that really had an effect on me. And then when I was in my 20s, Captain Picard had the most effect on me because I was getting into the working world, and his his style of leadership and work ethic and everything had a great effect on me. So unfortunately, Mr. Spock is gone, but Captain Picard is still around.
Right. He has a new show out now. Anyway, live long and prosper.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, a couple more questions. Like I said, you give us almost an amazing hour. Um, if let's say in this podcast, the whole world is gonna see it, the whole reptile community is gonna see it. And if there was one thing you would tell every herp keeper in the entire world, what would it be?
Um, I think what it would be to keep an open mind and to realize that there's more than one way to accomplish almost anything. What I see so much on the forums is people, especially people who are fairly new at it and who saw a few things or read a few things, and they think that some particular method, whether they saw it from me or anybody else, uh, that that works. So that's the only way to do it, and they're not very kind or diplomatic when they're telling other people, nope, you're doing it all wrong. But they say it worse than that. So keep an open mind, be open to new methods, new science as we're finding things out. And once it's great to start with the tried and true way whenever you get a new species. I do that myself to this day. And then after I've had that species for a year or two, uh, then I start to do a little bit of trial and error based on my observations of other similar species to see what might work slightly different because each circumstance is going to be a little bit different than the next environment. Whether you live in Florida or Arizona, when I lived in Florida, I kept all my colubrids on aspen. When I moved out to Arizona, I found out they didn't shed very well on aspen, and I switched to cocoa. So just be aware that there's not one exact method that's the only method to do something.
Right. I can't agree with you more. And being in nursing, I we have a saying: nurses eat their own young, and I think that that's true in the reptile hobby. Especially on a lot of these reptile groups, especially on Facebook. You can go into a reptile group and you could say something, and if the administrator of the reptile group don't believe you, you're liable to get cursed at and banned from the group. So it's just like keep like you said, keep an open mind, be helpful, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Exactly. When I go on any of these groups, and sometimes I'll answer questions, but even though I think the longer you do this, the more you realize that it's not just one way. And I'll say, in my experience, when I lived in Florida or when I lived in Arizona or whatever, I found this to work better than something else. But I'm not going to tell them, don't do what you're doing. I'm going to tell them, I think this will work better.
Right. I agree. Now, I definitely, I know that you said you don't keep a lot of stuff, but I still want to know what do you have. I consider you to be the queen of corn snakes. You were one of the first breeders, and a lot of people don't. They need to know that. There's history there. But we know that you master corn snakes. What are some of the other things that you bred or are breeding right now or keeping?
Well, over the years, back in the 80s and 90s, especially, we had a lot of different species. We kind of specialized back in the 80s and early 90s. We specialized in a lot of really colorful small arboreal tree vipers. Pit vipers like eyelash vipers were one of our favorites, and we did some Atheris. We did quite a few different ones, some Trimersurus, and I really liked them because they were small and colorful and easy to maintain. Uh, but of course, in Arizona, we don't keep any of those. We did a number of different kinds of lizards and frog, you name it. We tried a lot of them. But out here now, uh, I don't have large numbers anymore. I'm semi-retired. I have a few corn snakes, especially various Okiti types, and I'm raising a few palmettos that I'll eventually produce. I really got kind of heavily into the tricolor hognose from South America because when I first started them, hardly anybody in this country had bred them. A few people did, but not many. And since I started breeding them, I'm on a few Facebook forums for them that they've just exploded in popularity. So I still have a number of those. Um, I have a few Western hognose morphs, not many. Um, I have some blue tongue skinks that I've been breeding, a couple females and several males. Um, and I have a pair of ball pythons that we take with us to the shows and do some snake pictures. Oh,
Right.
and I just recently got a new species that I'm working on. This little digi skinks, Agrinius stokesi. I've got
Oh,
four of those that I'm
awesome.
raising up, and they're different than anything I've done before. A local person is breeding them regularly and is a fountain of knowledge about them. So it's something new and exciting. I think you have to do something new and exciting now and then if you don't want to get old and jaded.
Shout out to Low Life Exotics. He wants to know, do you still keep venomous?
Here in Arizona, uh, we don't keep. We haven't. We've been here about 10 years, 11 years, 10 years. We haven't kept anything not native to Arizona because you would have to get a permit, and I don't know that I could even do that out here. But we have over the last few years kept some various Arizona venomous snakes. Now we're down to just one, which is a sidewinder that is my husband's only snakes. He's pretty much retired from the live snakes now. So he has one sidewinder that he's had for years and years and years. Other than that, we don't keep venomous. Some of the ones like the tricolor hognose are considered to be rare fang, but not considered to be dangerous.
Right, right, right. I love hog noses. Now I want to have a little fun. And like I said, you almost gave us an amazing hour. We got about 5 more minutes. Because like I said, I like to keep my show to an hour because there's so much knowledge there. There's so much history. 8, 9 months, 10 months down the road, I would love to get you on for a round two and just keep talking because you have so many iconic stories. From a mobile zoo to being in a getting cast as an extra on George Romero's Day of the Dead, um, hanging out with Crutchfield, touring the world like it's crazy. Being one of the first to breed corn snakes is it's iconic, and I love your story. That's why I reached out to you. Now, when I have a little fun, um, have you ever lied to your husband? And when I say that, I mean project wise. Have you ever said, baby, I really need this corn snake or I really need this hog snake? It's only $300. And he looks at the bank and it was really $600.
Well, actually, Bill never liked doing anything to do with finances. Back when he used to travel more, the only thing he ever wanted to know about our finances is, do I have enough money for my next trip? Other than that, he couldn't care less whatever I wanted to do. So my projects were always pretty much mine. And back when he was doing more of them, he had projects that he liked to do. Uh, that was kind of nice because some of our projects were joint projects, but some were things that he wanted, and some even more were ones that I wanted. But his trips were things that he mostly did, mostly on his own because somebody had to take care of the animals. So no, we never had too much disagreements about the finances as long as he could do the trips he wanted to do.
He said, "Baby, buy what you want, long as I can go out of town. We're good."
Exactly,
I
exactly.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, like I said, I consider you to be the queen of corn snakes. So can you give us what do you think is like one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to corn snakes that you could say, you know what, that's not true?
I've heard so many people. I mean, people who have been keeping them for a long time know better, but a lot of people who are newly into it and who got their information from a pet store instead of a specialty reptile store either think that they're going to start out eating crickets or something like that, and they think that you can put two or three or four or five together. In the early days before I started realizing what my customers were doing, and each time my customers made a mistake, I cautioned future customers about those same mistakes. And some of the mistakes they made was keeping a bunch of them together, I, I forgetting about cleaning chemicals like cleaning the carpets and things like that, and exposing them to too many chemicals. And a big one was putting them in a container with their food and then putting it on a heat source. So those were some of the newbie mistakes that they made that I caution customers about ever since then.
Right, right, right. I love that. I love that. Well, Miss Kathy, you gave us an amazing hour, and it went by so fast. It was like I was catching up with an old friend.
It did go by really fast. Well, next time we do it, if I can remember ahead of time, I'll get some of the pictures that people might like to see from way back then about some of the things we talked about. And I'll tell you about some of our foreign exchange students that came from interesting countries.
Hold on, you telling me you had foreign exchange students come to your house to help to method where they're like to help you with the reptiles and stuff?
No, no, these were high school kids back in the 90s. Mostly when we had Glades Herp, they actually used to help to put together those 5,000 price lists to send out. And we tried to find kids that had shared some interest with us. Most of them weren't particularly interested in reptiles, but we made sure they weren't scared of them because I didn't want them to be scared to come into the house. So, and we have actually visited most, but not all of them in their home countries.
Miss Kathy Love, you have lived an insane life. I'm jealous. You gave us an amazing hour. Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna put you backstage. I want to thank you though for just coming on and chatting with us. Just a brief summary. Some of the stuff that we talked about is just insane. From having a freaking mobile zoo, driving around doing shows, being one of the first to breed corn snakes, freaking being an extra in a George Romero movie. Um, incredible, man. Like I'm such a fan. Again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere, okay?
Okay.
How insane is that? Like when I tell you that Kathy Love is an icon, like was one of the first people to breed corn snakes. Okay, been doing it since the 70s. She was back with the hippies. I love it. I love it. And to come up in an era of trial and error because back then they didn't have the internet. She learned as she went. Back then they didn't know you couldn't use red lights. They didn't know you couldn't cohab. So she had to see stuff happen and learn as she went. You know what I mean? Like nowadays we got the internet. It's just the era that she came up in is so much history there. It's so much. I don't know. I can't even say. Super, super fun show. This is Big Reptile Talk. Y'all already know the deal, man. This one was brought to you by my brother Dan over at Mile High Mutations, producing some amazing snakes. Make sure y'all hit him up. Check out my dog Eugene over at Morph Ambitions, man, producing amazing snakes. Shout out to Large March Morse, man. I appreciate you for being a sponsor. MKL Exotics, man. We couldn't do this without you, brother. I appreciate you. Frost Critters, man. I love you, brother. Thank you so much for being a sponsor of the channel. I love you. Mad River Surface and Rattery. I love you, man. Make sure y'all go hit up his Instagram or Morph Market. You already know ball pythons. Thank you for being a sponsor of the channel. I appreciate it. It's produced high quality snakes. Shout out to Matt Race Reptile Company. Ball enhanced pythons, man. Definitely a undercover brother that needs, just some more attention. Check out his snakes on Instagram and Morph Market and King's Reptiles, man. High quality ball pythons and boas, man. Just a husband and wife duo that is killing it. And as always, shout out to Michaela, man. I love you. Hey, Low Life Exotics, thank you. Everybody that was in the chat, thank you. Guapame for that super chat. It was my birthday. I appreciate you. Until next time, man. This is Big Reptile Talker. We out of here. Whoa.